Before that, my parents bought me a rowboat before I even had an outboard motor, and I used to row around, and I used to go over to Stony Island, and back, if you remember when Dunbar and Sullivan was there, and they had an active business over there. I hung around an old man by the name of Dave Finley, who was the yard foreman over there, and he said, "You guys been hanging around here so long, this is summertime," he says, can you do anything? He said, "Well, I've been around boats, I can do some fiberglass work and stuff, but we got this old boiler we use for survey work. Do you think you can fix it for us?" So, yeah, I fixed the boat for him, went on to work for him through the summer, went home, graduated from high school, went to college, 4 years in college, came back and started working for the company and worked in marine construction for about 15, 20 years. So, kind of spent my time on the river and grew up on the water, got to fish and hunt and do all the things someone could do back in the 70s and 80s. Then about the late 1990s, I heard of an organization called the Friends of the Detroit River. They were trying to work to save the Humbug Marsh, and they were having a meeting. So I went to that meeting and met the people there and got involved with that activity to save the Humbug Marsh, and joined their organization, became a board member, and then heard about a group called the Waterkeepers, a national organization that works on protecting rivers and lakes and water systems all around the United States and around the world. And one of our members actually went to one of their conferences out in New York and came back and says, "You know, we need to belong to this organization, but you need a riverkeeper in order to do so." And I said, "Well, you know, I've put quite a bit of time in reconstruction and maybe kind of looking to do something differently. So do you want to be the riverkeeper?" I said, "Sure." So that was back in around 2003. So for the last 20 plus years, I've been Detroit Riverkeeper. Been fortunate to work on the Detroit River Area Concern, and that's an organization. There's 43, and I don't want to spoil Mackenzie's presentation, but got involved in that and allowed us to get funding through the federal government to do a lot of work around the Detroit River. And if you've been out there, and you guys have, you've seen the work we've done around Celeron and Stony, and the work we just completed at Sugar Island. We did work up in the upper part of the river, and did a lot of that work. Other work that we need to do is deal with legacy sediments. As you know, over the last 150 years or so, a lot of contaminants have been dumped in the river from the factories and from the sanitary systems and deposited in the bottom. Created some problems there. It's affecting the biota, it's affecting the fish that we eat, and the other organisms around the river, and we're working right now to remediate about 4.5 million cubic yards. I could go on, but I don't want to step on the presentation, so been doing that. Mackenzie joined our organization. It's been now about 4 years now. It's been that long. Geez, time's flying. She's our stewardship coordinator, and she's working very hard to work on what we're calling our sediment remediation collaborative, and she's going to talk about that tonight. And she's been doing a lot of our presentations, and she's going to take it from here, and she can kind of pick up where I left off. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bob.
Thanks, Bob. And thank you for having us tonight. Really glad to be here. As Bob mentioned, my name is McKenzie Waliczek, and I serve as the stewardship coordinator. And this is one piece of the work that we do, along with a lot of different volunteer opportunities. So there is some information on the table. If you're interested, feel free to grab it, and hope to see you around sometime. So the Detroit River is part of our shared history and also our future. It's a critical corridor for recreation, commerce, and biodiversity. It connects our communities and provides beautiful spaces for everybody to enjoy. However, there's a challenge standing between us and a cleaner river. Hundreds of years of industrial use have left behind toxic sediments, degraded habitats, and hardened shorelines, which is why it's our mission at Friends of the Detroit River to protect, defend, and enhance the Detroit River for now and for future generations. As part of the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement, the Detroit River was designated as an area of concern, and areas of concern are locations that have been so badly polluted that they need special attention to become healthier again. And around the Great Lakes, there's 43 different areas of concern, 5 of which are binational, including the Detroit River. And in conjunction with local organizations, the EPA works with other agencies to restore the remaining areas of concern throughout the Great Lakes basins. So all of the points on this map behind me show the areas of concern. Those that are a circle still are still actively an area of concern. Those with a triangle have had their management actions completed, and then those that are designated with the star have been delisted. They have met all of the environmental issues that were identified, then they have done enough restoration that the natural environment should be keeping those consistently improving forevermore. It's important to note that the Area of Concern program, the goal is not to have a pristine river at the end of it. It's just to get these waterways back up to a level playing field with other waterways in the area. So there's still more work to be done after these AOCs or areas of concern are delisted, but this is just one step of getting us closer to that process. The Detroit River Public Advisory Council was established in conjunction with our Area of Concern program to facilitate public involvement in cleanup efforts due to these environmental issues. The Public Advisory Council provides advice to the federal and state agencies on issues of local concern and helps outline the steps and routines for enhancing the river. Members of the Public Advisory Council are broadly representative of the Detroit River Area of Concern, and Friends of the Detroit River has assisted the Public Advisory Council since its inception, and we currently serve as the fiduciary. All those meetings are open to the public if you want to hear bi-monthly updates on some of the projects that we're discussing today and also future projects, and there's more information about our PAC also on the table, so feel free to grab it and join us at a future meeting. So the rest of this talk will focus on the US side of the Detroit River, or the area in orange on the map behind me. There are very similar efforts ongoing on the Canadian half of the river, highlighted in yellow. And we work with them and get updates at our Public Advisory Council meetings from them as well. So you get to hear from both sides if you do attend one of those meetings. So I think we can all agree that the river provides many beneficial uses. But what happens when the changes to the physical, chemical, and biological integrity of our Great Lakes system is so sufficient that it causes environmental degradation? Well, those uses become impaired, and in the Detroit River we have 11 beneficial use impairments, or BUIs, also just environmental problems. And over the past years, about 20 years, we have spent a lot of time and effort and federal funds to help mitigate some of these issues that are on the screen behind me. Specifically those listed in orange and green, so numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. To remove the restrictions on drinking water, we had to demonstrate that water from the Detroit River met Michigan's drinking standards. And similarly, the tainting of fish and wildlife flavor issue was removed by addressing pollution sources in the river, leading to improved fish flavor and quality. To address the environmental issues listed in blue, we have done about, in orange, we have done about $50 million worth of habitat restoration efforts. And those include all of the projects highlighted in blue are complete to date. And we have one more priority habitat project shown in pink at Detroit Upper Riverfront Parks. And after this, we have, in accordance with the Area of Concern program, done enough habitat restoration that now our ecosystem should naturally be able to provide better habitats. Doesn't mean that we are done and there's no more habitat to restore. It just gets us up to that level playing field. So we hope to continue doing more of this work, but as far as our management actions go, we have done 13 of the 14 projects. Examples of completed habitat restoration include a few projects on Belle Isle, including the Blue Heron Lagoon, showed on the left, Lake Okanoka on the right, and the South Fishing Pier.
I think we lost the connection.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
I'm looking at it.
Or IT consultant, so that will be right.
It worked last time it did
Maybe
No
not, huh?
signal, what about this?
it. We're gonna just do this like I
To
did last time.
HDMI. Thank you for letting me know I wouldn't have looked backwards. Okay, here's the Belle Isle projects that I was just sharing. So recognized as one of Detroit's most popular open spaces, Belle Isle's interconnecting lakes and canals provided a significant framework for fish habitat and for wildlife. Historically, these waterways were connected to the Detroit River, providing aeration and circulation for fish habitat. But in the 1950s, the waterways were closed off from the river, creating stagnant conditions and eliminating the ability for Great Lakes fish to migrate into the island's lakes and canals. Pumps were installed to circulate the water, but were costly to maintain and ultimately fell into disrepair and no longer worked. So these habitat restoration projects made advancements in reconnecting the internal waterways of Belle Isle to the Detroit River, restoring an entire wildlife community with newly created habitat for reproduction and rearing of fish, herpetofauna like reptiles and amphibians, migrating birds, waterfowl, and additional work was also done restoring the Wetneysick flatwoods, which is shown here. That is adjacent to Lake Okanoka, to enhance habitat for greater diversity of animals and plant species. The specific improvements included breaching the Blue Heron Lagoon back to the Detroit River. So down at the bottom of this, you can see the new opening with a bridge for pedestrians to recreate and walk on. These new openings allowed the lagoon to capture river flow containing non-swimming fish larvae and its zooplankton-rich nursery habitat. The openings were accompanied by a new upland prairie peninsula, shown here. And that peninsula has 2 vernal pools on it that allow for turtle nesting. There's also, surrounding that peninsula, a shallow water emergent wetland and also a deep water aquatic plants to enhance the natural reproduction of our river fish species. In addition to the work done at Blue Heron Lagoon, this project also expanded a spawning shoal located off Belle Isle's eastern end, about 500 feet up the river from this project site. Making improvements to Lake Okanoka on the upper right, which is connected to Blue Heron Lagoon right here under this bridge. And so this is Lake Okanoka as well, is on the left hand, or your right hand of the screen. So that also allowed the fish from the river through Blue Heron Lagoon and into Lake Okanoka, and then another opening at the far end of Lake Okanoka right here opens back up to the Detroit River right where the South Fishing Pier is. So the lake is now completely connected to the river and the lagoon on both sides, allowing Great Lakes fish to pass through freely. And combined with the lagoon, this project totaled about 90 acres of calm spawning and fish habitat. The variety habitat designs were incorporated to provide multiple niche habitats, so that's shallow and deep water. And people also benefit from this project. I mentioned the 2 bridges, but there was also a ADA compliant kayak launch that was installed along the Nishua Canal on the other far side of Lake Okanoka that kind of cuts off the screen. The third project, the South Fishing Pier, is located on the shoreline of Belle Isle and has 3 breakwater barriers positioned parallel to the pier, and also 3 underwater rock berms that run perpendicular to the pier to protect the aquatic nursery habitat from freighter, wake, and ice flows. Within that protected zone, there's 3 deep pools to provide attractive drop-off zones for fish, and the dredgings from those drop-off zones were placed in the surrounding areas, raising the river bottom so that the elevation supported 2 acres of newly constructed coastal wetland habitat. So all in all, these projects were constructed as a nursery for larvae fish emanating from a nearby spawning reef and the existing shoal just upstream from the project site. So multiple projects working together here, all for that same benefit. We've also done many projects downriver. Here in the Conservation Crescent at the lower end of Groseal, we have Sugar Island on the left, Stony Island on the upper right, and Celeron Island on the lower left, or lower right. These islands have the capacity to provide tremendous habitat for local fish stock, including important spawning and nursing waters for muskellunge, northern pike, pumpkin sunfish, pumpkin seed sunfish, largemouth bass, yellow perch, channel catfish, and bullhead. Historically, lake sturgeon, lake whitefish, white bass, smallmouth bass, walleye, and rainbow smelt populations spawned in these areas surrounding the islands, and these projects specifically aid in their recovery. Mink and various turtle species reside in these islands, wetlands as well. These areas also provide a productive location for rare and transient waterfowl, along with nesting and feeding areas for many species of ducks and wading birds. Stony Island also contains the Detroit River's largest great blue heron rookery with over 100 active nests. These projects protect the islands from continued habitat degradation and erosion and allow these areas that have seen loss to recover and stimulate the expansion of quality habitat. So that's the first 4 environmental issues and the work that we've done so far to help mitigate them. Now, the next environmental issues highlighted in blue all relate to contaminated sediments. This includes the toxic legacy contaminants that have settled to the bottom of the river. They degrade our benthos, so they harm our plants and animals and the other organisms that live near or on the river's bottom, like microbes, worms, water bugs, crustaceans. They are vital for nutrient cycling and a very critical part of the food chain for the fish that we all want to catch. Contaminated sediments also provide restrictions on fish and wildlife consumptions, which is really important when we consider a lot of folks rely on the river for sustenance fishing to supplement their diets. Contaminated sediments result in fish tumors and deformities, bird and animal deformities and reproductive problems, and restrictions on dredging activities. So the process of remediating contaminated sediment, or cleaning it up, begins with sediment sampling. After that, characterizations and remedial designs help determine the extent of contamination and the type of cleanup or remediation that is needed. Feasibility studies then determine the viable remediation options, which is typically a physical removal or dredging, or a covering or capping with clean material, or a combination of those two. The remedial designs develop a detailed engineering plan, and then the remedial action is the actual work, the physical construction to remove or contain those contaminants. And then the final step with any project is monitoring after the project is complete to make sure that it is functioning as designed. So since the 1980s, there have been over 1,000 samples analyzed from the Detroit River to look at what contaminants there might be, including polychlorinated biphenyls, or PCBs, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, or PAHs, total petroleum hydrocarbons, TPHs, and many other things like DROs, OROs, pesticides, metals, cyanide, ammonia, dioxins, furans, and grain size. The state of Michigan, Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, or EGLE as its acronym, has completed characterizations for the entire stretch of the Detroit River. And between 2021 and 2025, they have been leading remedial investigations along the McLouth-Groseal shoreline, Elizabeth Park Canal, and the Gibraltar Canals. So what you see, oh, I didn't touch it enough for it to get timed out again. And I didn't watch what you did last time.
He won't let you see what he does.
The sound bar keeps turning off, and that's what kicks it out apparently.
I'll try to remember to finagle this a little more so it doesn't turn off. So what you see on the screen in orange, red, and yellow are the probable effect concentrations, or the level above which is known to cause harm. So that is yellow. If it's 2 times the amount known to cause harm, that's shown in orange. And if it's 3 times the amount known to cause harm, it's shown in red. But it's important to note that many of our contaminants exceed 3 times the known amount that causes harm, but our color scheme only goes up to red. So it could be 3 times as much concentration, or it could be 100 times as much. In the mid to lower Trenton Channel, that's shown on the screen here with the Groseal Toll Bridge up at the very top of the map. The PAH level is over 57 times the amount known to cause harm. PCBs are over 21 times the amount known to cause harm, and mercury is over 20 times the amount known to cause harm. And on this slide, it is just a continuation of the last one, so you can see this map picks up where the last one left off, and you can see those same concentration levels around Elizabeth Park and the public bridge going over to Groseal. So the Detroit River has multiple contaminants in very high concentrations due to the number and intensity of industrial uses over the past 100 years or so. Of most concern are the PAHs, the PCBs, and mercury. PAH, or polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, are an environmental contaminant formed from the incomplete burning of things like coal, oil, and wood. They are known carcinogens. They increase the risk of cancer, liver and kidney damage. They accumulate in the food chain, and they cause health issues in fish like liver tumors, and they cause mutations and birth defects. In certain areas of the river, like the River Bend stretch closer to Detroit, PAH is found at over 8,000 times the concentration that's known to cause some of these issues. PCBs, or polychlorinated biphenyls, are persistent contaminants, which means they don't degrade in our environment very easily, and so they last for a really long time. They've been used in products like electrical capacitors, easy word for my mouth, transformers, and hydraulic oils. PCBs are a known carcinogen, and they also accumulate in the food chain, increasing the risk of cardiovascular disease, liver disease, and diabetes. And they're also correlated with crossbills in birds and jaw deformities in mink. And the last contaminant of most concern is mercury, which is a heavy metal, and it comes from sources like burning coal and is released from products like batteries and fluorescent light bulbs. People are exposed to mercury by eating contaminated fish, posing health risks to the human nervous system and fetal development. Mercury accumulates in fish tissue growth, causing reproductive problems and liver and kidney damage. Wildlife affected by mercury poisoning suffer from neurological, physiological, and physical issues. If you haven't already, I highly recommend you and anybody else who eats the fish that they catch, check out the Eat Safe Fish website. offered by the Michigan Department of Health and Human Safety Program, and it provides guidance on what species of fish are the most healthy to eat and how to properly prep and eat them to be the most safe that you can, and gives limits on a yearly basis of how many fish you should be eating within a time frame based on what that species of fish is. And this image on the bottom is from that website. And they update that pretty regularly and make it for specific water bodies. So if you're fishing in the Detroit River, you might have different guidance than if you're fishing at Kent Lake, I heard thrown out. So all the characterizations that the state has done so far has helped us determine where we need to target for remediation or cleanup efforts. And that includes all the areas on the map in blue behind me. So pretty much our entire shoreline on the US side of the Detroit River. Over the past few decades, about 7 remediation projects have already been completed, and those are represented by the white circled numbers on the map. It includes the Black Lagoon, which is number 3 on this map, next to the McLouth shoreline, which was our first Great Lakes Legacy Act agreement project. And that project removed about 115,000 cubic yards of contaminated sediments that were mostly PCBs, mercury, lead, zinc, and oil and grease. Yeah.
So once you took it out, what did you do with it?
So disposal of these contaminated sediments, they have to go to a specific either landfill or confined disposal facility. And so I believe this material went to Point Moulet.
When where?
Point Moulet, confined
Inside the
disposal
banana tank.
facility. The kind of shoals that you see out on the shoreline there.
So it's still part of the watershed, it was just moved?
Yes, it was moved into a facility that will not have it be leaching or moving through the water column anymore. And that would be the goal for all of these cleanups, is that the material goes to another confined disposal facility or CDF like Point Moulet, or a landfill, or another area that has the appropriate measures to keep it contained and out of our ecosystem and the water columns. Right now, we don't know exactly where that is for all this material, because as Bob mentioned, we have over 4 million cubic yards of it, but that's part of the process, is figuring out where we're going to put it all as well. Thank you for the question. So it's estimated there's about 4 million cubic yards of contaminated sediments along all 32 miles of the US side of the Detroit River, and our early estimation for the cost of this cleanup is about $1 billion total. In the Upper Trenton Channel would be about $1 million worth of the project to clean up about 215,000 cubic yards of these contaminants. Right now, the remedial designs for this area are complete, and the construction is planned for 2027 to 2028. So that is this area here. McGuagan Creek, so in the next blue section on the map. Remedial designs are almost complete here, and the construction is planned for 2027. Moving further down the McLouth shoreline. Right now, this is under a EPA Superfund site, so there is an obligation from the federal government to clean up this area, and that work is being done separately from our sediment remediation efforts, where we are voluntarily working with groups that want to be a part of the cleanup, whereas this specific stretch of shoreline, the partners were told you have to clean it up. So there's multiple ways to go around this as well. Superfund sites take a lot more time and a lot more money to do, and so we're taking a little different approach on our efforts to streamline the processes.
Mackenzie, would the cleanup at the McLeod site on the shoreline, as well as, the adjacent lands, whatever standard was established, or whatever, conditions you guys strive for on these other, is it similar in comparison? The cleanup levels or?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
I don't think there's many differences between the Superfund levels of cleanup and our levels of cleanup. There's still just the same goal. Right now, we're a failing grade, and the goal of these cleanups is to get us to a passing grade. It's unlikely we're gonna be able to remove every single contaminant from the river. We just need to get it to a point where we're not having high enough concentrations that we see the harmful effects.
At the McLeod being a Superfund site, as Mackenzie mentioned, is different than the kind of legacy work that we're trying to accomplish at the other areas. They're currently doing sampling and assessment on the property itself to see what kind of contaminants are on the property if they have to be remediated. We pretty much already have a pretty good idea of the contaminants out in the river.
Okay.
So it's kind of two different processes that kind of are working together. So as Mackenzie mentioned, Superfund takes a little bit longer. They should be pretty much done with all of their sampling through this year or so, and start putting a plan together or a determination on what needs to be done, if any, on the site itself.
So any water drainage from the land is at least stopped at this point?
Well, fortunately,
The
that's what
drains?
they're determining now. The water movement kind of moves across the property. It actually kind of, because of the, particularly towards West Jefferson, because of the quarry, the water table tends to flow towards the quarry since they pump the quarry, so it kind of goes in that direction. We don't know exactly. They're still, again, they got wells all up and down the shoreline there, and they're still in the assessment phase right now.
And the water they pump out of the quarry, they put it back in the river? Or do they
Well,
have-
yeah.
That's what I assumed.
Yeah, so there's some issue, like I say, there's some issues with that, and that's been brought to their attention, and that's part of the whole process, so.
Okay,
But they'll have determination on the site itself within the next year or so, determine on what they need to do. If they find that there are contaminants that are entering the river, now fortunately, a good portion of the property has a seawall, but probably half of it doesn't.
right.
And we have similar situations in other, which are much worse than I think that site is.
Is there some issues with something coming out of the McGuagan Creek too?
Well, McGuagan Creek went right up into the old chemical site area there, and depending on the kind of materials that were in that ground and anything that, through the whole, multiple years or decades that there was a chemical plant there, that could have been a source too. Now, they went back in the early 90s and they blocked off McGuagan Creek, drained it out, and dug it out and put some lime on the bottom, but they're still kind of assessing that. And that's what the McGuagan Creek sediment remediation project is working on right now. They weren't able to get the contaminated sediments at the mouth of the creek, and they're going to get that, and there's a stretch of it down the area there, just where that other seawall is, up by the toll bridge, and do that. But all that's being assessed. The upper part of what you call the River Trenton Railroad site, which is near the toll bridge, that's, for all intents and purposes, a different company. It's River Trenton Railroad, and McLeod is another entity. Eagle, the state, is kind of overseeing the River Trenton Railroad site, and then EPA with Superfund is overseeing all the work that's being done on the old McLeod, the southern part of the site.
Bob, they're also stretching it north to in front of BASF.
Well, that's the Upper Trenton Channel project, and that goes from the toll bridge all the way up almost to the hospital. And
Yeah.
that project is nearing, they're pretty much got all the engineering done on that. They're just trying to work out some configuring how they're going to, working out with the property owner to be able to take the contaminated
so,
materials
yeah,
and put them on site and drain them down.
So
treat
what
the
I know
water.
about that, being the city manager of Riverview, that all that property is in Riverview? And
Yeah.
it's Arkema property?
Yeah, it's pretty
So-
much,
so there-
Arkema is across the street, that's.
But it's also on the water, Arkema.
Right, they got that little part there.
All the way up to the golf course is Arkema, to Pennsylvania Road. That's Arkema.
I don't know if
And it
Arkema has
touches the
all
line
of
down.
that.
It does.
Yeah, okay.
And what the deal is,
Yeah,
they want to put material down.
Right.
And they want to de-water on that
right,
property.
exactly,
And then they want to take that material that's de-watered.
right.
to the landfill in
Correct.
Belleville and dump it
Correct.
there, because that's a
Correct, so,
hazardous waste. So
Yeah.
they're working with the city of Riverview, the city of Wyandotte,
yeah,
and Arkema.
And-
Arkema's a French-owned company,
right,
and all they did was cap it, they did the you know,
right.
they did
And there's
the
still
very-
some concerns with that property itself.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of hot spots on
And
that
I
property.
think that's, what's holding up the project right now is they determined that there is still some contaminants leaching into the river.
Oh, really?
And EPA has a protocol that we can't dredge and clean the river before we stop the contaminants from what, it's the point source.
But that's a seawall all the way down.
Well, part of the seawall, part of the old Wakefield wall, wherever you see the concrete, you think that's a solid wall, it's not.
Okay,
Basically, what you have is you have wooden pilings down there, you've got wood down underneath, and you got a concrete cap.
okay.
So when the water goes down real low, you can look under there, and so that's wide open
Okay.
under there. So, and you'll see that they've gone back and actually put some steel seawall out in front of some of that because it was failing. So that's kind of what's holding that project up right now. They got to figure out, how they're going to address that material, so.
Yeah, we got another question?
Okay, this goes back about 10 minutes. If you're depositing all the spoils into the banana dike area, I have a question.
Mhm.
Does the wildlife and fish in that area get tested? Like, let's just pick out a species, the freshwater pelican colony back in. You go in there and test them to see if what you're putting in there is contaminating them, or you don't care?
The state does testing. I'm not sure exactly on what species, but I know they are doing testing, and I think we're waiting on the results of their most recent fish tumor study to see is there a relation to the amount of contaminants and the tumors that we're seeing in fish
'Cause I know
livers.
there's a lot of birds that's their home. Like I said, freshwater pelicans. We got a big colony down there now. But I didn't know if that's affecting them.
The banana dike itself, the enclosed part of it, is filled in.
But the pelicans don't know that.
Well, the
They don't know that they're not supposed to go into that area. Neither do the water birds and the ospreys and anything else and the ducks that are gonna.
The material goes up in this, there's only one cell open, it's the very northern cell. Unless there's water in there, which I don't believe there is, in the cell itself. There's just the contaminated material, which is dry. The pelicans are, and the other, now there's an open area where you can go in with your boat if you go in there, but that's all contained, that's separate from the CDF part where the contaminants are. Behind that, where all the wetland is, where most, I think, where the pelicans and the ducks and everything else are in, that's separate. That's not connected to it, it's not.
Well, that's all fine and dandy. My question is, are you going in there and testing the animals in the area where you're depositing all these spoils?
Well, again, we don't
So
have,
the answer is
the
no.
Corps of Engineers, you'd have to address the
Okay,
Corps of
that's all I
Engineers.
wanna know.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say the answer is no, it just is something that I don't know off the top of my head, but I can definitely look into it and see
But
what I can find
you
out
see
for you.
my concern, you're moving something bad from here to here.
Yeah.
Dave, I know that whole spoil was designed to contain the contaminated sediments that were being dredged, out of the shipping channels.
Let me.
So I think there's provisions for what you're
Right.
talking about.
I don't know, like I said, birds don't know boundaries.
But where we fish inside
Animals don't know
is separate
boundaries.
from,
How do you know
behind
that
the
they're
wall.
not nesting over there, or they're going over
well,
there?
I
Or
understand.
something's leaching in? That is my question. It's all fine and dandy that you got an answer, but, it is, I guess I'm saying, is this place a better for terrible things than this place? I think they're both bad, just my opinion.
Well, that's why they're gonna start dewatering this stuff and taking it to a landfill. That next project's scheduled to do that, so.
Then you got people inland that are gonna complain because they don't want that near their property. See,
Yeah,
this is-
essentially
this is the
we're
point
taking
where
the-
It goes back to the root of the problem. If you go back 150 years ago, theoretically, people were smart and done the right thing. When they produced something and created a contaminant or waste byproduct, they would have incorporated the removal or remediation of that in the product itself, and it would have been taken care of back then, but it wasn't. We're 150 years or 150 years later, we're dealing. Are you familiar with the dumping grounds?
Yep,
Okay, you know what the dumping grounds are?
yep.
The dumping grounds are all the contaminated sediments that came out of the Rouge and Detroit River for 100 years that they used to take out in barges, open bottom barges, and go and dump that and dump it out there.
I know that.
They said, they realized, you know what, the lake's getting contaminated, it's killing things. We still got to get rid of the sediment, we gotta keep the navigational channels open. I'm speaking on behalf of the Corps, it's not my point, I'm just giving you this, how it came about. We can't continue to dump in the lake like that, so we need to put it somewhere. Well, they said, okay, well, let's go to Grassy Island, and, you know, the Coast Guard put a mediocre dike around it. It was a nice island, wetland, it was a great hunting area from what I told, and some of the old timers before me, and they put a dike in there and started dumping that stuff there and filled that in completely. When I was working for Dunbar and Sullivan, one of the last jobs I worked on, had a contract to do maintenance dredging in the Rouge, and we were taking and putting that stuff in there, and that filled that up. And they realized that that wasn't a great location either because that dike wasn't properly constructed in the first place. What are we going to do? Well, let's construct a properly engineered dike system, and that's what we got the banana dike, so they put it in there. So there's no, I agree with you, there's better things to do with it, but you know, you just can't just keep dumping it in the river.
Once everybody found out that asbestos wasn't good, they decided it's better not to take it out, just cover it up.
Well,
It's safer.
the problem with the river is so dynamic, you know, and that's why they got to get the sediment out of there because it just keeps resuspending. As long as that
Okay.
stuff's in the bottom, it's going to affect the
And Dave, I know that Ducks Unlimited was part of that banana dike construction idea. So whether they took that in consideration about exposed areas of contaminated sediments for wildlife to, you know, have access
Yeah,
to.
well, Ducks Unlimited isn't a bunch of scientists and microbiologists. They were a function for this to get done. They just sponsored it. I'm sure they thought that they were doing a really good thing too, but my afterthought is it best to move it from here, just a couple 100 feet down the watershed and dump it here? I don't understand that. That's just my concern.
Yeah, no, and the analogy that has been shared with me is, you know, is it better to have trash all floating around the environment, or is it better to put the trash in a
I
bag?
understand that,
And
but
then
I
so-
was just curious, do they test that area?
Yeah, I'll see what I can find and follow up with Rick and share an email, and John, the folks I got emails for, and if I get an update, I will be able to share that with you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So what's keeping all the contamination is being dumped in instead of dredged, you know, and where the banana is? I noticed, I fished that for many years, you know, and recently I went on the backside of it, where there's these big tubes that are out there, probably 10-foot tubes, you know, probably about 10 of them back there. Seemed to me like, is there a waterfall that goes through there? I mean, is that stuff just going from one side out the other side?
No.
No, that's separate.
No, the banana dikes are a separate system, they're enclosed. They completely go all around it. Where you're talking about is all the wetland behind it, where the tubes are, where the water goes in and out. That's all isolated wetland. That was, the banana dikes did a great, irrespective of the fact they put contaminant inside them, did a great job to protect the wetland. And this goes back 100 years. There used to be huge hunt clubs back in there. That was wetland all through there. And some of you have been around a long time, longer than I have, to remember what it looked like before. The lake was, water came up and it was just wiping that out of there. Good majority of the wetland were gone. By putting the banana dike in there, that helped protect it from that. So that created that. So all of that wetland behind the banana dikes, that's all protected because of the banana dikes, and they wouldn't be there if it wasn't for it. Irrespective of the fact that inside the banana dike you have an enclosed area that's engineered to hold that contaminant. Theoretically, if it's doing its job, the contaminant stays inside the diked area, and all the wetland and all the activity back there where the wildlife are, where the hunting areas are, where you can go back in there and fish, those should be separate and relatively clean areas back there.
When they dump that stuff in there.
But they don't dump it, they dump it in the banana dike, that's an engineered bathtub that's got a liner in it to keep it in there.
So it's got a liner.
There's no water connection between that and the area you're talking about in the back.
And they actually flood that backside seasonally too, Paul, for certain species of waterfowl.
Yeah,
They control the water levels, you know, with a cofferdam.
yeah, yeah.
All right, we're at Elizabeth Park Canal and the Gibraltar Canals. Right here, there is ongoing remedial investigations, and the portion from the Elizabeth Park Canal between George Street and the canal is planned to be addressed by another Superfund Emergency Management Division project. In the Gibraltar Canals, the state is doing remedial investigations for the roughly 2 miles of canal systems down here. And the investigations will further delineate where those contaminated areas are, so we can take future remediation actions there. All of this work that Friends of the Detroit River is leading on behalf of the Sediment Remediation Collaborative, the EPA, and EGLE will utilize the Great Lakes Legacy Act, which is one of the key programs to help remediate contaminated sediments in the Great Lakes areas of concern. The Great Lakes Legacy Act is a cost-sharing program with the Environmental Protection Agency. It's a voluntary program, so we work with folks that want to be a part of these projects. And there's an incentive where the EPA provides 65% of the cleanup cost, and then our voluntary local partners help provide that other 35% of the cleanup cost. So what's standing between us and a cleaner river? We know that characterizations for the entire river have been completed and that we still have to do a few more remedial investigations, specifically along the Rouge Ecorse shoreline, Elizabeth Park Canal, and the Gibraltar Canals, which is being worked on right now, and hopefully should be completed by the end of this year. While all of those things are wrapping up, EPA, EGLE, and Friends of the Detroit River, on behalf of the Sediment Remediation Collaborative, are working to identify those local cost share partners to help bring that last 35% of the project cost to the table. Early estimates figure that the feasibility designs and remedial investigation, the next 2 phases of this work, are going to cost about $30 million, which means we need to raise about $10.5 million of local match to get us to the point where construction can begin. So we know this is a huge effort. It's going to take a long time. We're going to have to do it in sections, but there's many different opportunities to get involved, and we expect it to look different for each of the organizations, businesses, municipalities that we work with. Participating in meetings when you're available and receiving updated communications is one way to help with this work. You can also lend your name and your support to help build connections to encourage other stakeholders to join. Obviously, contributing to the local match requirement is another way that you can get involved with this sort of work. And luckily, we can be really creative with what that local match looks like. It doesn't have to just be cash. It can be in-kind contributions like other projects that are already being planned that can be taken into account. Storage, access to the river. And so if you know of any projects planned or have any connections, we highly encourage you to reach out and talk directly one-on-one with us. Like I said, we can be really creative, and so we're encouraged to think outside the box. This is a big ticket project, and so we all need to be creative to figure out our solutions to get there. So all in all, habitat restoration, sediment remediation, these are all really powerful investments in our economy and our health. Research shows that for every dollar invested into Great Lakes remediation and restoration provides a $3.35 return on investment. as a critical corridor for biodiversity, recreation, and commerce. The Detroit River stands to realize major economic and community benefits, including stronger tourism and fishing industries, healthier sustenance fishing opportunities for local anglers, revitalized waterfront properties, and increased public health once these legacy toxins are removed from the river. With the Great Lakes holding about 20% of the world's fresh water, and the Detroit River providing drinking water for roughly 40% of the state of Michigan's population, it's critical that we invest in clean water now and for our future generations. And with that, I just want to say thank you again for allowing us to come and speak to you this evening. It's been a pleasure. If you have any questions, I am happy to do my best to answer them. And then just a quick reminder, we have a lot of different information over here that summarizes this presentation. And we also have a website and an email on here if you think of some questions later on and want to reach out to us. Yeah.
The picture you showed of Stony Island, Celeron Island, Sugar Island, are those current conditions or are those low water conditions?
They were all taken at different
With all the
times.
berms?
So
Yeah, that
this, I know this photo was taken in August of 2024 at Sugar Island.
That's cool, I've been in there.
I want to say, Bob might know these off the top of his
It's
head,
been a long time since I've been on the road.
but the Stony Island picture was likely taken around 2018, 2019.
2019.
Did I catch it? Oh. And then the Celeron Island picture was likely taken around 2020. So recent conditions.
All those obstructions actually marked?
You can see them all.
Oh, yeah, they're all well,
They're
they're well.
visible.
They're visible?
Yeah,
even-
they're visible.
Even in high water?
Yeah, well, we haven't had high water in a while, but
I
they're
mean, when
still
you're
very
running-
visible.
When you're running 100 miles an hour, I don't need to run into it.
No, you won't. You won't, you'll see them.
In fact, some of that was being installed during the high water, Frank. Hey, Bob, I don't mean to defer to that. Is that area that we talked about on Hennepin Point there, where BASF's got some work to do, that's slowing the progress of the, I call them revetments, north of the toll bridge there in that marsh? Is that still something on schedule, or?
Hennepin Point is currently being assessed through Eagle and BASF. They're determining if there's any leaching going on and materials off of the site into the river there. There may be some remediation along that shoreline, and we're waiting to see how that turns out.
Right, does that affect your timeline for what you wanted to do out on that break line of the marsh, like you did south of the toll bridge?
We were gonna do that project on the north side, but due to conditions out of our control.
Right.
Because BAS still controls the property, even though the Gross Nature Land Conservancy has control of the property, but BAS still technically owns it. And they decided because of the wells that are underneath there, there's, they withdrew all of the salt brine, that they didn't want to put any more weight on that area. If you've been around, you knew that the north end of Hennepin.
So that just kind of canceled the project then,
Yeah,
or?
so we moved on to
You're
do
not
other
gonna
things.
do it then, huh?
No, we've got one more project left to do, and that's up at a park up in Detroit, north end of the river.
All right, well, thank you. All right, we're gonna take a 5-minute break for bathrooms. They're just outside to the right, and selling tickets for the raffle. So if you wanna buy a ticket for the raffle, it's $5, and you got a chance to win
Mackenzie, do you have fish on
$35
there?
brand new tackle.
The other, right, yeah.